How are you gonna pass up Bride of the Cannibals 2, the director's cut for a gay dance? It's the most insane sequel ever made. It's banned in over 26 countries. Can you even begin to comprehend that awesomeness?
Yeah, we heard this one part with the brow with the piranha teeth bites the guy's dick and balls.
John, you see it in the close-up. Well, it does sound good.
For all of Cabin Fever's gleefully nihilistic charm, behind the cameras it was a classic Hollywood underdog story. After trying and failing to get it produced for years, in part due to his unwillingness to bend the script to popular horror trends, Eli Roth forged ahead with a partial budget, raising the rest while in production. The result wound up in a bidding war between the same companies which had repeatedly rejected the script. Spending more than they ever had in acquiring a film, previously uninvolved Lionsgate won out, and Cabin Fever went on to be their highest-grossing release of the year. Through all this, it remained a delightful, simple little throwback horror comedy, and it could have settled contentedly into that niche, even optimistically with the box office success, but it broke an underdog cardinal rule. It got too big. And this was compounded by the well-meaning enthusiasm of Peter Jackson and Quentin Tarantino. Jackson made his Return of the King crew watch it twice and gave Roth pull quotes for advertising. Tarantino, in an interview for Kill Bill Volume 2, referred to it as the best new American film and called Roth the future of horror. But here's an oversimplification of jaded genre fans. They assume that idolatry and self-aggrandizement are the same thing. They feel the need to play this polarizing balancing game. If someone like Tarantino is characteristically hyperbolic in his praise, it's not enough to say, yeah, it wasn't that good. They have to fucking hate it. By now I've heard it's an overhyped piece of shit so much I'll need to palate cleanse every once in a while with a viewing to remind me, oh yeah, it's just a delightful, simple little throwback horror movie whose reach never exceeds its grasp. It was the culture surrounding the movie that A, made it so divisive, and B, set it up as a franchise property. Giving the sequel to Ty West felt shrewd. Like Roth, he was entrenched in the iconography of old-school horror and was creatively uncompromising, maybe to a fault. He didn't have much to his name when he made Cabin Fever 2, but since then he's inspired divisiveness in line with the original. House of the Devil was his make or break and a totally love it or hate it movie. If the slow burn tension didn't work for you, it moved at the pace of a paraplegic snail, and snails only have one foot. I loved it. I can totally understand people hating it. So West is a guy who unflinchingly pursued his own ends, and guys like that are often worth seeking out just for the unique takes they provide. Finding out he was behind Cabin Fever 2, I just jumped on it. It didn't matter that it was universally panned. It didn't matter that it had been shelved for 2 years after completion. It didn't matter that West disowned it, tried to get an Alan Smithy credit on it, and makes it clear every time he's asked that it's not his movie. And that's upsetting, because I felt that, you know, at certain points one could see... I mean, I thought, setting aside the trivialities of... which is to say, in a certain light, one could say, that, academically, of course, that you could concede that... Oh, fuck it, I love Cabin Fever 2. No one's even supposed to love Cabin Fever 2, not even out of blind loyalty to Ty West, because he hates Cabin Fever 2. I'm supporting nothing but clinical studio meddling, but I can't help it. I think West's original vision was too good to have been expunged completely, and I believe in what's left of it, the sloppy remains of a love letter to John Waters. His intentions were spot on. When a movie fulfills its premise and in no way necessitates a sequel, but gets one anyway, it usually goes one of two ways. Most likely it just carbon copies its predecessor's high points, but a self-aware director who understands this problem can instead just go totally apeshit with it. And bless him, that's what West tried to do. But at some point we have to leave the pure homage to John Waters and enter the murky waters of studio meddling, as convoluted and contrived as that wordplay. West moved on after production had wrapped, but the studio continued to reshoot and re-edit to the point where he completely disowned the finished product. The studio argued that the changes they'd made were minimal and cosmetic. West, not being a DGA member, couldn't get that Alan Smithy credit that he wanted. Eventually, Cabin Fever 2 was plopped onto the home video market with minimal fanfare and scathing response, something to be swept quickly under the rug. I mean, it was a boorish, juvenile, gross-out horror comedy. And... yeah... but... help me out here. Listen to me pour my heart out and then tell me I'm wrong. I need to know that I'm just crazy tasteless. There's closure in that. Because if Cabin Fever 2 really is as good as I think it is, yeah, that's a can of worms. Despite being an 80s period piece, our story begins 10 seconds after the last one ended. Cabin Fever's compulsorily ominous final moments had Ryder Strong's infectious self dropping dead into the town reservoir. Not quite dead. This whole intro is meant to twist your expectations. Decaying rusted metal and gothic atmosphere, plus the mutilation and desperation of Ryder himself as he stumbles hopelessly through the woods, all point to a self-serious tone which, in a brilliantly uncut shot, gets literally run over. And with that, we are primed. Cabin Fever walked an admirably fine line between comedy and legitimate horror, but West makes his statement within 3 minutes. Even sequel-spanning main characters are nothing but comedic bus fodder now. And if that festering freeze frame wasn't enough to convince you of his gleefully foul intentions, there's this. And Winston, the only other returning character, he and I had the same relationship as in the first movie. I felt like I should have found him annoying, but I didn't. He declares the pulped body a deer and drives straight into a truncated animated opening credits sequence reminiscent of Mike Judge, which takes the tainted water all the way to the local high school. Here we're introduced to the poor man's Jonah Hill. Not her. Wait for it.
Andy Taylor's fucking ridiculous.
And the poor man's Michael Cera's poor man's Seth Green. John likes Cassie, but her ex-boyfriend is a psychotic with a black belt, and Alex is exasperated. Within 30 seconds, they blitz through more character development than everyone in Cabin Fever combined. Minimum time is spent fleshing out ancillary folks because, let's face it, that flesh is all getting eaten anyway. There's crazy ex-boyfriend, a fat girl in love, a maybe pregnant girl, an angry janitor, a couple of nerds, and Cassie, who slides just as neatly into her role, quirky, attainable, down-to-earth girl, as anyone else. There's been some early warning signs that West is going to earn his hard R, but the real unabashedness of it starts with Alex offering consolation to a heartbroken girl and ends with a quickie bathroom blowjob that underscores some misogynist themes he brought up earlier.
For every single girl in this building, that is the priority. Revenge.
And it's not specifically the cold sore or braces, more that. And yes, it is completely over-the-top, unnecessary, gross, but how many movies get marketed almost completely on how they're totally unrated that wouldn't dare go anywhere near that? Cabin Fever 2 is legitimately unapologetic, and better yet, it's fun, not grim and gritty, so it's part of that shit pile. It's at the very top of that shit pile. But back to the poignant wholesomeness of John and Cassie, a walk-home build-up to a prom invite shoot-down.
How about it?
I can't, John. I'm sorry.
Sans sperm, even, leaving John pretty much catatonic. Winston, meanwhile, is finding more virulent evidence of infection and puts 2 and 2 together just in time for a pre-prom disco-infused jauntage. Alex eventually convinces John to attend despite his own worsening health. Halfway in, the stakes are set for a climactic night out, and all the threads of subplot unravel into individually sickening set pieces. Angry janitor unloads infected urine into the punch bowl, fat girl in love gets raunchy in a pool, inviting cetacean implication that Ty West and I are both way too classy to lower ourselves to. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. The maybe pregnant girl becomes an abstinence poster girl. Back on the dance floor, everything starts to get a little carried away. I guess that pun only works in writing, really. Carrie is a movie based on it. Special forces show up to cull the infected, and John, Alex, and Cassie are left to find some way out. The full implication of John's bathroom tryst is presented in the most excruciating way yet. And you're thinking, don't show us. And I'm thinking, but how can I convince you how great the movie is unless you see this? In perhaps the first compelling argument ever made for shop class, telltale signs of infection on John's hand are given a quick fix with a circular saw and liberal duct tape. So if you were looking for a surefire icebreaker, just watch out for psycho ex-boyfriends. Conversely, psycho ex-boyfriends, watch out for nail guns. John and Cassie make it into the woods, but only Cassie makes it out, hitching a ride with Winston and Pal, who are fleeing the indiscriminate slaughter of townspeople. The coda scene offers one of the most compelling arguments for West. There's a whole extended bit at a strip club that tries to supply the "it's not over" endnote in similarly deranged fashion, but I swear it is instantly obvious that the heart is gone. It's presented in militant dullness with none of the flair of the preceding 80 minutes. And I thought this the first time I ever saw the movie before I'd done any research. And, surprise, turns out this was the additional footage they shot without West's involvement. It's shocking. In fact, it's inspiring. Go auteur theory. The strip club scene feels sterile, hackneyed, and devoid of glee. If there's one thing the entertainment world needs, it's more glee. God, I hope that joke is irrelevant by the time anyone hears it. So, is it possible my zeroed expectations going in made it easy for Cabin Fever 2 to be a pleasant surprise? Possible. Likely. Shamefully probable. It did have a leg up on its straight-to-DVD contemporaries, with a budget 10 times higher than the original Cabin Fever. Between the surprising amount of money on screen and the novelty of a director who gives a shit, yeah, maybe I was easy to wow. But it goes deeper, starting with how much detail West was willing to work in. The pervading sense of weirdness fills every frame. When John gets thrown into the wrong class, of course there's a dick on the chalkboard. And of course it's frog dissection day in biology, led by a teacher with a deformed lip and featuring delicious frog juice hijinks. Even disposable victims get little conceptual twists like throat talk thingies. This is a level of creative engagement that would be par for the course on a typical theatrical release, but it's above and beyond for straight-to-DVD horror. Cabin Fever 2 was meant for theatrical release originally, which would seem to make that judgment unfair, but no more than context colors our opinions of any movie. And it's possible that as a theatrical release, I would have loved it just as much for how far it went. Either way, the context boosts it as a black sheep. Too left field for theaters, too finessed for DVD. I mean, West actually tries to make us care about his characters, and I almost sort of did. By letting the dialogue stay loose and semi-improvised, he invites a more innocent and relatable take.
So how are you doing?
What?
Everything.
I don't know. It's okay. I don't know. I'm fine. I don't know. Like, relationships are hard. What can you do? Yakety smackety.
Yeah, they're not quite up for it, but you can see his good intentions. The road to hell and all that. It's critical, though, because this is why I think I love Cabin Fever 2. It's nice. It's ugly and gross and nasty and unnecessary and mean, but it's nice. Back to all those unrated movies. It all started thanks to elite work print of American Pie, but caught on with horror movies thanks to the widespread consciousness around the MPAA rating system and how movies got cut down to increase potential demographics. Horror fans responded to the idea of more aggressive violence and nudity, and, no shit. But at some point, the sadism becomes absurd. Things become darker and more violent and nihilistic, but eventually it's no fun anymore. It suggests a pretty dim view of gorehounds. I thought it was all about the absurdity, the novelty of conceptual taboo, and the execution of spectacularly violent effects work. But at some point, someone needs to wink and remind us it's all for fun, because otherwise we're just pushing content until it's indistinguishable from a snuff film. That's not good. When I watch See No Evil, I don't think the director cares in the least about me. I think he kind of hates me. He just wants to assault me with hateful violence and death and make me feel bad. And that's supposed to be good? Because, I don't know, it makes me feel like a grown-up. So, who's Ty West? Well, Tyr, he's the ADD-addled friend you had when you were 12 who showed up at your door at 7 a.m. bursting with infectious excitement, a frog, and a microwave. I love Cabin Fever 2 because it's grosser than most horror movies, even the unrated ones, but it's not just fun, it's gleeful. You can call that humor sophomoric and iconoclastic, and other words I don't understand, but I'll take it in a second rather than feel like I'm submitting myself to another S&M session at the hands of a self-serious snuffmeister.